Amendment be disagreed to, I call the honourable member for Fremantle.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm glad to make a contribution to the debate on these bills, to which in their present form I'm strongly opposed. There's no question that the protection of fundamental freedoms and the fight against harmful discrimination are important causes. They deserve to be approached seriously, carefully and in the right spirit. That's not the case with these bills. What we cannot have is a rushed, badly shaped, last-minute set of laws that put Australia's core ethos of egalitarianism, social inclusion and social cohesion at risk. What we cannot have is a set of changes that in reality enables discrimination, and more than that, a set of changes that will cause real and immediate harm and anguish to LGBTQIA+ Australians. More than that, changes that will cause harm and anguish to vulnerable children. That's not acceptable, so these bills, as they are not acceptable. Like most contributors to this debate, I've been contacted by hundreds and hundreds of people in my community on this issue. My constituents, most of them in reality are strangers to me, some of them are my family and friends. Overwhelmingly, those people are contacting me to say, don't do this. Don't allow a bad piece of law to amplify intolerance. Don't let this government turn the wheel back in the direction of prejudice. Don't enable discrimination that might hurt my kids, that might hurt her or him or them. And Deputy Speaker, these bills, without considerable change, will hurt young people. These bills will enable conduct that doesn't genuinely improve freedom of religious belief in any meaningful way, but absolutely impacts on the well-being of people who already experience cruel and hurtful discrimination and who are already at risk. This side of the chamber, we're not going to stand for that. The Leader of the Opposition, in his deeply thoughtful and principled contribution to the debate earlier, said that on this side, we will insist on considerable changes that must be made to these bills. We will insist on them. Deputy Speaker, as I've said, making laws in this area should be done with clarity and with great care. It should be done consultatively, with an emphasis on collaboration and consensus, because, of course, above all, we want to maintain and encourage in the Australian community tolerance and unity and social cohesion. We want to build by example, even in this place, respect and empathy and love for one another. There are churches and mosques and temples and faith groups and faith-based schools in my electorate that practice respect and empathy and love all the time. Those are not the qualities that animate these bills. These bills have been sprung on the Parliament at the very end of this parliamentary term. The committee process had to be rushed and conducted over the holiday period. The government itself had not settled on a final form of the bills before this week, and the government itself still doesn't have a unified position on these bills. Sadly, on this issue, as on almost every issue, the Morrison government's approach has been largely chaotic, self-serving and dysfunctional. It has made promises that it simply hasn't kept. The Leader of the Opposition detailed how the Prime Minister gave a commitment on the question protecting children from discrimination on the basis of their sexuality or gender, yet these bills before us break that commitment. We won't stand for that. Labor's leader, the member for Grainler, had previously offered to work with the Prime Minister on a careful and sensible means of improving the protections for people of religious faith, especially for those like Sikhs and Muslims and members of the Baha'i faith and others who commonly face discrimination, and that work is important. But the government spurned that offer because it always prefers silly political games to proper policy reform and responsible government. Deputy Speaker, in this area, we have to start by acknowledging that freedom for one person can involve discrimination against another. That one person's freedom can directly infringe on another person's freedom. And people of faith know that. People of faith know that because it's people of faith who have been discriminated against for their religion, mostly by people of other religions. That's the history of the world. That's the history of some of the worst inhumanity that mankind has ever managed to inflict on itself. So the question of protecting religious freedom is a delicate one. It is complicated. Of course, it's worthwhile, but it has to be done carefully. And some of the deep flaws in these bills need to be fixed precisely because they could well and more than likely will enable discrimination and vilification in the Australian community. It's not hard to understand that if we make changes in this area badly, it's not just possible, but it's likely that intolerance will grow, that division will grow, that discrimination and vilification will increase, and that freedom will actually be constrained, and that vulnerable people get hurt. In relation to the freedom of religious belief and expression, I do want to make the point that this has always included the right to hold no religious belief whatsoever. We should remember that some of the most harmful prejudice in history has been from people of religion towards people accused of having no religion, of being essentially regarded as godless one way or the other. And that includes Indigenous peoples the world over, and it certainly has included the Indigenous peoples of Australia. Deputy Speaker, I'm not religious. I respect the right of people to follow and express their faith. At the same time, those who are not religious deserve the same respect in return. Finally, Deputy Speaker, there can't be any real debate about the fact that these bills are a terrible mess. They do not carefully and meaningfully improve the protection of religious freedom in Australia. They may well increase religious intolerance and conflict. They will certainly enable discrimination. They will cause harm in their present form. That is why it's only by making considerable changes that these bills can be made acceptable. And through the parliamentary process in its entirety, we will insist on those changes. We will fight to change these unacceptable bills, and then we'll fight to give Australians the competent and caring government that they deserve.